Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Mark Caberti, founder of the Content Marketing Plaza, bringing you 3 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. And before we jump into today's episode, let me ask you a quick question. How much would your life change if you could make 6 figures from your content? Imagine being able to quit your 9-to-5 job, do what you love for a living, and spend more time with your family. That's what we help our students do at the Content Marketing Plaza, an 8-week program that will help you build your way to 6 figures via your content. You can learn more about the Plaza by heading over to contentmarketingplaza.com, which will be in the show notes. All right, let's jump right back into the episode. One of the things that you hear a lot about in entrepreneurship is this need to be patient, this work for 5 years and then you start to make your profit. Put in all these hours and then you start to achieve this result that you're going after. And yes, entrepreneurship is hard work, but if you're able to work smartly, you can achieve these big results. You can achieve financial success much quicker than what most people are telling you. So if you feel like you're putting in the work, you feel like you should be earning more, this episode is for you, because it is possible to earn a lot in your first year. And a lot of people, I mean, if you're listening to this, you may be in your first year, you may be in your 5th or 6th year. So you can really have a turnaround year. We're going to talk about that right now, but it's just a matter of being in that right mindset. So we will get into that. And today's guest who will be with us in this episode, she is a former highly paid corporate insider and expert in scaling businesses with over 30 years of experience. And when she built her first business, she was able to achieve massive growth right away. She made $60,000 in her first year. In her third year, it was over $250,000, and her revenue has been growing at around 50% or more each year. So definitely a lot of continued growth after her initial success. So who exactly is today's guest? Well, today's guest for episode 296 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Eileen Mendel. Eileen, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate the honor of being on your show as well. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Eileen, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I feel like this is a topic that we could really dive deep into. Before we do that, though, I'm wondering if you could give us some background on us, maybe tell us a little bit about your journey. I know you've got the Balanced Millionaire. That's the big thing you're working on. So I'm wondering if you could shed some light on that a little bit as well.
Okay. Well, first of all, you need to identify, which I did in my own past, before I even started a company, identify what you're good at. And so when I first started my company, I knew I was good at solving problems. I knew that I enjoyed pharmaceutical marketing and business development, doing deals, getting sales closed, just having that whole view of what's going on in the marketplace. I found it exciting. I was following the stocks of various companies. I just really delved deep into it. And that's how I decided, I said, I know so much about this industry, far more than my peers, because I just love the industry, that I will be a consultant to the industry. And that's how I became successful, because I studied the industry, and I was involved in both the business development, marketing, and science part of the industry before I started my consulting business. Does that answer your question? A little bit about my history?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. You had a lot of these different things that you pursued, and it's all culminated to where you are now. And sometimes different things that you pursue, you can really connect those to your business model in a way where other people may not necessarily be able to make all those connections because their interests and their passions are not as far spread out. So definitely something important to think about. And one of the questions that I just want to go to right away, I mean, in your first year, you make $60,000, which, I mean, for content creators, you usually hear about you got to be working for like maybe a few years to get to that level, and then $250,000 in year 3. What do you believe are some of the essential actions and decisions you made to reach those kinds of numbers?
Well, as I said, I already had a passion for the industry, and I got to know, who was who, what players, what companies were known for which drugs, and just what was going on. Just the players, the products, the marketplace. And I had finished up my degree a couple of years before from MIT. You don't necessarily have to go to an MIT or Harvard, but it all helps for your credibility. And so I had a master's degree in business. I understood what it takes to market yourself, get yourself visible in the marketplace, get to know who are the decision makers. And so I worked my immediate next step once I graduated was to get into a pharmaceutical company, which I was there for a year. And then I decided at that point to go off on my own. And I realized how they decide on vendors, budgeting, the cycle. I knew a little bit, more from the inside of what goes on in the industry because I was an employee of the industry before I stepped out.
And it's interesting. You did a lot of research. You knew all the people who you needed to know. So, doing that research and really making the right connections can help you with hitting the big goals that you have for yourself. And, part of that is also the mindset. So I'm wondering if you could go a little bit into the differences that you see between the millionaire mindset and the mindset of someone who is not at that level yet.
Well, of course, when I started out with my job with the big pharmaceuticals company, we had budgets where I was playing around with millions of dollars. And so my mindset when I left the company and started my own firm was I want to grow this company to at least to $1 million in our revenues. And I want to be the go-to person for marketing and business development by the big players as well as the venture capital startups that also were ambitious in growth and either wanted to go IPO or be acquired. So I knew my goals. I already had my missions set up in my mind. And so that being said, what I did was I brought in, as soon as I could, I brought in an assistant to help me so I wouldn't be bogged down by administrative things like scheduling appointments and travel and opening up mail. And then I brought in a partner who had a medical background, an MD as well as PhD. And even though I was CEO of the company, he came in and became a partner to me. So he was able to take care of the operations while I went on the road and I would go and visit. And nowadays you don't have to actually go and visit because you could do things over Zoom and Skype. But I would go and visit the various companies to go face to face with their directors and vice presidents and sit at the conference table or in their office and give, if I could get their team together, I would give an entire presentation with slides, the whole 9 yards with their team. And since I knew the industry like the back of my hand, I would be able to answer questions and, give a very confident presentation. So that's what got me in the door, that they would be impressed by my professionalism and my knowledge base. And that's what got me on their vendor lists and got me noticed and got me return requests for proposals, and things just started moving very quickly. So the mindset of the millionaire mindset is you can do it. The belief in yourself, the confidence, just get to know who your customer is. I always got to know the customer. I read up on the customer, studied the customer before I stepped in the door, and go in there with confidence that you know what you're talking about. You know the industry. You know what you can do, your capabilities, that you are better, one of the top in your field, that you can serve your client and you can do it efficiently, on time, within reasonable cost. And if you can convince the client of that or the prospect of that and be confident, that will get you, going further to getting the deal closed. And that's the mindset that you have that vision in your head. I want to be the contractor for these big companies, for the Fortune 500. I want to be the contractor for the growing startups that could be the next Google or Apple. I want to be that. And I would journal and I would think about that every single day. That was my driving force. I would drive thousands of miles every day with living out of hotels and suitcases and come back, to my office in California. And then 2 weeks later, I'd go back out again to make more sales calls or to close deals. I mean, it was a grueling time period when we didn't have as many tools as we do now with Skype and Zoom. But I just did what needed to get done to convince the directors and vice presidents, the hiring decision makers, for outsourcing their vendors, that I was the one they wanted.
And I mean, just listening to your response, like one of these big themes that I'm seeing is being around the right people, and whether it means like having existing relationships or getting out there to build new relationships. There's this theme of being around the right people. So I'm wondering if you could give us some insights on how we can surround ourselves with the right people, whether it's the decision maker or just someone who is going to help us get better.
Well, while I was building the firm, I did multiple things as well as going out there and making sales. I would contact the big six accounting firms because they actually worked with my big clients. So I would actually, be friendly with them. We'd interact, meet with them on a constant basis to get referrals, great referrals from them. And also contact the big law firms as well that were working on the various trademarks, patents, business plans, whatever for the big firms as well as the startup firms. And I would also befriend the venture capital community. So we were always talking, going out to lunch, whatever, having coffee with the big players that were also in the industry who could put us on the referral list, because then they got to know us and what we do, and we had the integrity that was up to that level that they knew that we can achieve with what the company, their client, wanted to achieve. So yes, we did surround ourselves with great referral sources, as well as talk to high-level people constantly. I mean, we were always we were invited to investment banking meetings, to board meetings. We knew we had to reach the top people, and that's where we got the confidence to be hired by top clients.
And it's really interesting you mentioned talking to high-level people constantly. And with your background, I mean, you can talk to someone with a venture capital company. You could talk to someone high up in another corporate company. But for the entrepreneur who maybe doesn't have that corporate background, it could seem a little daunting to approach these companies. And also this whole process of actually reaching the decision maker. So for entrepreneurs who they want to reach corporate companies, or they just see that this is a really nice skill to have. So when something comes up and they really want to do this outreach, how do you get confident to reach out to these corporate companies? What kind of approach does it take, especially from an outsider?
Okay. Yes, when I would first do my presentations in front of directors and vice presidents of Fortune 500 companies, as well as the highest level people in the accounting firms, as well as the attorneys and the Silicon Valley venture capitalists, I'm talking about the partners, I would get butterflies in my stomach. I would be nervous. And that was, and I still, it still makes me nervous because I want to do the very best presentation possible and get on their short list of people to call on. So first of all, despite the fact, your knees might be shaking, you get butterflies in the stomach, whatever, you just go for it anyway. Do it anyway. And that's the mindset that I have. I said, if I want to get there, I'm going to have to go through the fire. I'm going to have to cross that bridge from fear to getting it done, to doing it so many times that I would just feel confident in front of these high-level people. And that's what happened. I just had to do this self-talk that I'm good enough. I can do this. I know I can do better than so many other people in the industry that I had already dealt with when I was an insider. I said I could do a much, much better job, and I know I could succeed. And that's what I had to keep saying in my mind before I had the meetings and walked in the door, and remind myself that I am capable, I've got integrity, I can do this.
And I mean, it's a really powerful where, you can learn all these different ways to reach out to people. You can learn all these different ways to deliver a great presentation. But in the end, when you are in that experience, you can feel a little nervous. But the key is to just do it anyway, because you believe in all of the work that you've put in to reach that point. So definitely think about what you've done to get to where you are. If you're ever thinking of I've got butterflies in my stomach, the example that Eileen used, or something like that. So that definitely is something very important to think about, how far you've come, because then it's going to be easier for you to achieve results, accomplish your big goals. But when it comes to big goals, they're just sometimes we feel stuck on the way to those big goals. So I'm wondering, Eileen, if you could share with us, what do you believe holds most people back from reaching their big goals?
I think they sabotage themselves. They don't believe that they are as good or better than their competition. So they hold themselves back. They say, maybe, I'm just not worthy. I don't deserve this. I don't know that I can achieve the expectations of what this customer wants. So they retreat back into, let's just stick with, our comfort zone, rather than reaching out. If you really want to grow your company, you have to have, those big goals, and you have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. I know that most people have heard this before, but it is so true. Because there's always going to be a first time. Always going to be a first time. And then once you've done it, you have the experience. Well, I've already done this. Now I could do it again. And I'm telling you, when you go in the room with, the shaky knees and the sweating and the butterflies in the stomach, to make your entrance and introduce yourself for the first time to, vice presidents, directors, managers of companies who are going to make that decision to whether to hire you or not, after those first few minutes of, introducing yourself, And after getting started in your talk, you start going into a zone where I know my stuff. I love this. And I lose all of that shakiness and whatever, and I start calming down, and then I start just going into what I know, what I'm capable of doing, and I forget about, who I'm with, because then I become in the zone of what I can do for the company. So then you forget about the me part of it, what's going on with me and how are they judging me, and start looking at what is it I can do for them? How can I serve these people? You come from a serving point of view rather than looking at, I'm fearful, I don't believe in myself, maybe I'm not good enough. You don't look at the situation anymore from that after the first few minutes when you get started, because you're concerned with what you can do to help the client move ahead and get what they need. And that's maybe it won't happen the first time. You'll still be nervous, but the second time around, after the first few minutes, and the nerves died, they calm down. It becomes, what can I do to serve these people?
And that's a really great question. Like, what can I do to serve these people? And I feel like when you ask yourself that question, you really get deeper into what you need to do to achieve success. And it's that kind of question you get to. And I mean, you mentioned you got to believe in yourself. And I know this sounds like stuff that you hear a lot. I get that. But if you really believe in your stuff, then you just fall in love with the process. You enjoy the work. It doesn't matter who you're presenting to, because you just love this topic so much. And then instead of having some kind of self-doubt thought like, oh, I can't do this, it's how can I best serve this person? And the thoughts you have really affect your ability to deliver on a big stage and just be able to accomplish your goals. So, Eileen, definitely some really awesome insights in there. And one question that I really do want to ask, because I mean, with your company, you got some really awesome growth like this, especially at that around 50% continued growth each year, which is really impressive. So I'm wondering, what do you see as some of the essential habits you've developed that led to your success?
I think it's essential to have a CRM and continue to maintain contact with the top people that you think are going to be your ideal clients. So even if they don't hire you from the very beginning, you're constantly in touch with them one way or another. It could be through a phone call, an email, just checking in to, I was visiting your company about a month ago. I'm just checking in to see if there are any needs, how everything's going. So you develop it's a relationship building process. And so you can't, it's hard to do it with everybody, but you'll identify after a while who your top people are that you want to stay in touch with, that you're in sync and alignment with. They understand what you do. They appreciate what you do. They want to do business with you, but maybe the timing was wrong. So you just want to keep in front of them and top of mind continually. And that is going to get you the jobs, the projects that you want.
Eileen, thank you for sharing with us some of those habits. Very interesting you mentioned the CRM, because relationships, I mean, if there's a single word I can use to really encapsulate a lot of what we've been talking about, it is relationships. It is being able to build your way up to the top decision makers of a company. It's building relationships with a prospect, someone who could become a client. So relationships are something really important. That's something that I've really been getting throughout our time together. And one thing that I also want to emphasize in this episode is the value of learning. And I do this for every episode. I just talk about how important it is to really learn. And one of my favorite ways to learn is to read as many books as possible. So with that in mind, Eileen, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Well, what comes to mind, I like the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. I mean, it's right on in terms of what people are looking for to make a decision, and how social media or authority, etc., how that will change people's perspective of you. I also like Why by Simone Simonuk, and that's a good book. The other one, I'm just looking at my shelf here. I love the author of Start with Why is Simon Simonuk. I'm sorry. Start with Why. And the other one that I really like, the other author I really like, is the author of Blink. And I can't think of his name right now. It's not at the top of my tongue. But every one of his books are really very good.
We will include all those books in the show notes, markberry.com/E296 for Blink. I believe that's Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to verify that. So that will be in the show notes. We'll also throw in content marketing secrets for anyone who wants to drive traffic to their content and boost their revenue in the process. So that will be there as well. And before we wrap up this episode, Eileen, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
That's interesting. I would say, well, I always ask myself, why am I doing this? What would I really love? Do I love what I'm doing? So it's more than one question, but it all comes down to, do I love what I'm doing, or what do I need to readjust or change to make it even better and more fun and more fulfilling?
Eileen, thank you so much for sharing with us that great question, all of your great insights throughout our time together. If you guys want to learn more about Eileen, head over to Balanced Millionaire. That is something that will be in the show notes, but she's also offering you a free 30-minute strategy session. So Eileen, where can we go to learn more about that?
Go to my website, www.thebalancedmillionaire.com. I also have a free ebook on the homepage, and they can go ahead and download that ebook.
All right, so free ebook on that page. You can go there to get your free 30-minute strategy session as well. Really awesome with the free value you're providing at the end, and all the value you provided in the episode as well. So Eileen, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Breakthrough Success today.
You're welcome, Mark.
Want to dominate the podcasting industry? Now you can with your free copy of my book, Podcast Domination. You'll learn how to launch, grow, and monetize your very own show. And whether you are a beginner or an expert, this book has a lot of golden nuggets for you. We'll cover the cost of producing this book. All we ask is that you cover the shipping. To get your copy, head over to markguberti.com/PD.